I've long been a fan of the Roubo workbench, amazingly solid and great to work on. But there have been two things which have always stopped me from building one in the past, and I guess many others as well. One is the size of the top. Trying to find one single massive board to make it on is not easy, and not easy to handle it either. And the other side of it is the joinery, a bit like timber framing rather than cabinet making. So this got me thinking that there must be an easier way to do this. And here it is. This is my Roubo workbench, and it's not a very big bench. It's 5 feet long, 20 inches deep and 37 inches high. But it's amazingly heavy, weighs over 100 kilos, about 230 pounds. So it's a real chunk of a bench, and the top's there 5¼ inches thick. I've chosen to fit my bench with a traditional wooden screw vise. It's fast acting, extremely solid, and grips really well. You can see down here that I've tapped my screw directly into the leg, and this is because I'm fortunate enough to have a tap and die set 2½ inches wide or diameter, which I bought from Dieter Schmidt in Germany. However, if you're looking to do the traditional wooden vice screw, you'd be probably better off getting yours from a specialist manufacturer or supplier like Lake Erie Tool Works in the US or Richard Maguire in the UK. And if you really want to push the boat out, perhaps you should look at the mechanisms from Benchcrafted in the US. They're fantastic. So the first of the problems of overcoming having a single slab board was easily dealt with. It was made by laminating up the bench from thicknesses of timber. That way around you can have a bench as thick as you like, as wide as you like, or as long as you like. And you know the timber is dry and it's stable, and so it's not going to go anywhere. So here, what I've done is to laminate the central sections here from 2¼ inch thick timber, and then when it comes to the edge here, I've dropped it down to 1⅛ inch timber for the final 3 here and the final 3 here. And this will give you a clue to how I dealt with the joints. Now the joint here is extremely clean, and you'll notice that it's been wedged here. Now Roubo, he advised that when the benches were being made, that any gaps that were that came from assembling the bench, which there would be inevitably when you're dealing with something this thick, were actually wedged and filled with wedges. And that got me thinking that maybe if you're going to wedge them afterwards, it would be a good idea to actually build wedges into the construction of them. So you can see what I've done here is the tenon. It's been made the same size as the dovetail tenon here, and it's been wedged quite neatly. I've made the wedges the same size here as here, and I'd like to show you that technique. And by laminating the legs and laminating the top, you can actually construct this whole joint together without any chopping and any grief. It's really quite simple to do, and I'd like to show you that now. So I've got these pieces here. This here is the mortise part. So there's one of the 2-inch sections here. This is what this represents. And then here, added to that, is the start of the mortise. Now you'll notice here that I've angled these, and then I'm going to, on the tenon side, match this angle up with the tenon and the wedges. So that board gets glued onto this board with the ready mortise there. And the next board gets glued on. And then after that, the final board incorporating the dovetail tenon gets glued on as well. So that's the mortise side. And here is the tenon side, which is the leg. And again, this is in 3 sections. So the first section here is the tenon. And one thing I'd like to show you here is the way that the wedges are cut in here. I mean, firstly, I made sure that the gaps here were even on both sides. And you can see that the cuts which were done on the bandsaw here go all the way down to about 1/8 of an inch there at the bottom. Now this allows allows it to move and wedge quite easily. And this avoids any risk. If you'd gone straight down with there and you hammer a wedge in, you could continue the split down the wood. So this was a way that I was shown at the Barnsley workshop, and I like it, and it works very well indeed. Now matching these are wedges which slide in here. And again, the wedges were made with a great deal of care. They were made to be identical, so that when they're inserted exactly the same distance into the wood, when they come to be cut off, then you can see, as in here on the bench top, they're nice and even as well. So it's just care, it's just attention to detail, especially if you're going to use a contrasting timber, you don't want them to be uneven. So they just simply slot into there, and that's how that part works. So the second part of the joint is just level, which matches up here. And then the third part of the joint is the dovetail tenon. And this was cut on the table saw and finished off on the hand saw. And again, in identical thickness timber. So all of these parts here that make this section of the bench need to come through the planing machine identically. Otherwise the joint won't work. So if I assemble this little mini joint here, then I can show you exactly how it works. So my method here is to glue up the 3 laminations for the leg, and to glue 3 of the 4 for the mortises, and leave the final one off to the end. And so here I'll show you how they fit together. So that slides on there, and you can see it's quite a tight fit, but it's a good fit. So there's the joint together. And then the next part is to actually take the wedges, insert them in their gaps there, and these need to go down equidistant there. So we just work gently along. And it's worth taking the time just to work along to make sure that both those go in there evenly. And as you can see there, they've gone in evenly, so we're left with the same distance there, same distance there, same distance there, same distance there, and we're going to get a nice neat joint. So it's worth taking the time to make identical wedges, to make identical cuts in the tenon, and then to insert them at an identical distance in, and then you get your reward with a nice looking joint. Now after that's done, and after that's all in place, then it's time to actually fit the last board on the outside to complete the second of the tenons, which is the dovetailed one. And it's actually a lot easier to, once that's all in, is to build the dovetail joint around it. So to glue on this board, the central board, and then the final board to the bench here. So this one, I'll just show you. Just screw that on there. And this one here. And just screw that one on there. And there you have it, the completion of the joint. So it turns a very complicated pair of joints, into something which is quite easy to build. And on this particular project, when I assembled the legs, I assembled the bench upside down, and 3 of the 4 legs just dropped down into the mortises with no wobble in there, but they just dropped down under their own weight in there. And the 4th one needed a little bit more persuasion. I've been working with this bench now for 6 months, and there's nothing I would change on it. It's a really great bench, and it's like working on an anvil. Fantastic. So I hope this has encouraged you to have a go yourself and taking away some of the obstacles in building this fine Roubo bench. Thanks very much for watching.